It's July 27th, 1996. Atlanta, Georgia. The Summer Olympics are in full swing. The cities are packed with athletes and tourists. The Olympic flame burns at the heart of Centennial Park, a downtown hub built to showcase American hospitality to the world. It's after midnight, but the party hasn't slowed down. Nobody thought something would go wrong. At 12:58 a.m., a man walks up to a lighting tower near the concert stage. He places a green military backpack at its base and disappears. Then, he made a 911 call from a nearby payphone stating, "There's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes." Minutes later, a security guard named Richard Jewell spots the suspicious bag and alerts the officers. They begin pushing the crowd back, but it is too late. At exactly 1:20 a.m., the bomb goes off. It is made of 3 pounds of explosives and 3-inch nails packed tight around them. The explosion sends hundreds of metal fragments into the crowd. Many people are injured by the blast, and some are knocked to the ground. Emergency responders and bystanders begin to react quickly as smoke fills the area. A 44-year-old woman named Alice Hawthorne is killed instantly, a nail driven into her skull. A cameraman named Malai Uzunyal suffers a fatal heart attack while running toward the chaos. Over 100 others are wounded, some injured for life. Investigators believed the plan was for law enforcement to arrive and begin clearing the area before it exploded. If that had happened, the bomb would have likely targeted police officials. But the timing didn't go as expected, and instead, the victims were mostly civilians. The world's largest sporting event just became the site of a terrorist attack. Within an hour, CNN reporters are at the scene. For the first time since terrorists attacked the 1972 Munich Games, the Olympics are about more than just winning medals. Federal investigators quickly take control of the scene at Centennial Park as the FBI examines the remains of the device. They determine it was built using simple materials but designed for maximum harm. It becomes clear that the person behind the bombing had experience and a deliberate plan. Someone saw this event as the perfect stage to send a violent message to the world.
We've got the Olympic Games going on. We're concerned that whoever did it may do it again if we don't get hold of it.
The FBI agents move fast as they flood Atlanta. They believe the person responsible is still in the area, someone who had been able to move through the crowd without drawing attention. Within 48 hours, they identified a suspect. Richard Jewell, a 33-year-old security guard, the man who reported the suspicious backpack and helped push the crowd back just minutes before the bomb went off. But how does someone go from hero to prime suspect in under 3 days? The FBI was under enormous pressure. An international event had just been attacked on American soil, and the world was watching. Investigators were desperately looking for patterns, and in Richard Jewell, they thought they saw one. A lone man with a law enforcement background who just happened to find the bomb just in time. Could it have been staged? Could Jewell have planted the device himself so he could later find it and appear as a hero? It wouldn't have been the first case where public safety workers committed crimes to later be seen as the one who saved the day. Jewell had worked as a sheriff's deputy, but was fired. He'd been a college campus security guard, where coworkers said he could be overly strict. Jewell lived with his mother and wanted badly to be in law enforcement. To the FBI, he was the perfect suspect, a lonely man desperate for attention, but there was still no evidence. Then, someone inside the investigation leaked his name to the press, and that's when everything changed. Richard Jewell's face was suddenly everywhere. News vans parked outside his building. Headlines called him a hero one day, a suspect the next. He was placed under constant surveillance, and the media began reporting on him as the prime suspect before any charges were filed. Living with his mother, he watched as both their lives were dragged into the spotlight. In the eyes of the public, he had already been convicted, all while no actual charges were filed. The FBI followed him everywhere. They set up surveillance outside his apartment. Agents followed him to the grocery store and tapped his phone. Investigators even took the shoes from his closet for analysis. When the FBI brought him in for questioning, they told him he was helping with a training video, then tried to get him to waive his rights. All of it without a single piece of physical evidence linking him to the bombing. It would take 88 days before the FBI officially cleared Richard Jewell.
This is the first time I have ever asked you to turn your cameras on me. For 88 days, I lived a nightmare. For 88 days, my mother lived a nightmare too. And it's rushed for the headline that the hero was the bomber. The media cared nothing for my feelings as a human being.
But now the real question remained: who had actually bombed the Olympics and why? January 16th, 1997. Just after 9 a.m., a bomb exploded outside an abortion clinic in Sandy Springs, a suburb of Atlanta. It was similar to the Centennial Park device, a pipe bomb packed with nails.
When the first bomb went off, it was a feeling of panic because I had never experienced anything like that in my life.
About an hour later, a second bomb went off in a nearby dumpster. It was a deliberate trap, timed to injure first responders. No one was killed, but the pattern was clear.
Standing there, I remember in the split second saying, "He did it again." And I remember the shrapnel flying by my head.
Then, on February 21st, 1997, just over a month later, another blast. This time, the target was the Other Side Lounge, a gay nightclub in northeast Atlanta. A nail-packed explosive device detonated outside the club, injuring 4 people. It matched the earlier bombs in both design and intent. Now, the FBI had a series. 3 bombings in under 8 months, all in Georgia, all aimed at symbolic targets and constructed with the same level of precision and planning. The agency formed a joint terrorism task force. They began publicly referring to the attacker as the serial bomber. The public still knew almost nothing, but internally, the FBI had a clearer picture. The bomber wasn't just targeting crowds, he was sending a message. Investigators reanalyzed everything: witness statements, security footage, forensics, and that's when they found something: a truck. At the Sandy Springs bombing, a witness had spotted a man leaving the scene in a gray Nissan pickup. They hadn't thought much of it at the time, but months later, that detail became critical. On January 29th, 1998, the case took a new turn. Another bombing, this time in Birmingham, Alabama. The target: another abortion clinic. Police officer Robert Sanderson was killed. But unlike previous cases, this time the FBI had a breakthrough. A witness at the scene had seen a man running away just before the blast. More importantly, the same gray Nissan truck was seen speeding away. Local police traced it to a suspect, Eric Robert Rudolph. Rudolph had lived in western North Carolina, but was known to move around the Appalachian region. He was 31 years old, with a history of anti-government and white supremacist associations, as well as the extremist Christian identity group. Now, investigators believed they had their man. They issued a federal arrest warrant. On February 14th, 1998, Eric Rudolph was officially named as the suspect in the Birmingham bombing. Within days, authorities connected him to all 4 bombings. But by the time the FBI arrived at his last known address, he was already gone. Eric had disappeared into the Nantahala National Forest, a rugged stretch of mountains and wilderness that spans over 500,000 acres in western North Carolina. He knew the terrain well. He'd lived there before, and he was prepared. For the FBI, a new chapter was about to begin, a manhunt unlike anything they had dealt with in decades. For nearly 5 years, Eric survived off the land. No electricity, no running water, no contact with the outside world. He built crude shelters from branches and tarps, hunted deer and small animals, and drank from cold mountain streams. Eric stayed alert at all times, making sure he remained one step ahead of those searching for him. By early 1998, the FBI had spent over $24 million on the manhunt. Hundreds of agents searched the forest for years. Helicopters scanned the treetops. Ground teams followed broken branches, footprints, but they were always behind. So how could entire FBI teams fail to capture a single man living alone in the forest? The truth is, Eric Rudolph wasn't entirely alone out there. All this time, he lived around small towns, places like Murphy and Andrews, where many people saw the world the way he did. Hatred towards the federal government ran deep. And in the eyes of some locals, Rudolph wasn't a terrorist. He was someone who had stood up against a system they felt had betrayed them and their ideologies. These people helped Eric in many ways, or at least looked the other way in order to protect him. But whatever they did, it was in order to help a terrorist escape. In our exclusive video, we reveal the psychology behind the protection he received, the mindset, the shared ideology, and the subtle methods used to keep him hidden. The hours of research uncover mind-blowing details that no one mentions to this day. If you want to get access to this, as well as weekly case files, mini-courses, interrogation breakdowns, and much more information that didn't make the headlines, click the first link in the description. It really seemed like Eric Rudolph had gotten away with bombing the Olympic Games. But then, everything changed. It was May 2003. Rookie police officer Jeff Postel was on a routine patrol behind a grocery store in a small town near the edge of the Nantahala National Forest when he spotted a man digging through a dumpster. At first, it seemed like just another homeless person, but the officer noticed the man's strange behavior. He was too nervous. Jeff decided to make a call and bring the man in for questioning. Back at the station, the police ran a routing fingerprint check and finally revealed the name of the man: Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber, the man the FBI had spent 5 years and millions of dollars trying to find, captured behind a grocery store by a rookie cop on night shift.
I observed the silhouette of an individual kind of crouched down, kind of in a sneaky looking mode, walking towards the rear of the Save-A-Lot grocery store.
With Rudolph in custody, the FBI launched a full-scale investigation into the network that had shielded him for so long. Bit by bit, the silence started to break. A few people came forward, sharing how sympathy for Rudolph and their deep distrust of the government had kept him safe all those years. After his arrest, he confessed to all 4 bombings. He described his actions as necessary acts of resistance and showed no remorse for the lives lost or destroyed. In 2005, Eric Rudolph pleaded guilty to his crimes to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But even with the serial bomber behind bars, the attacks continued affecting the world, mainly the Olympics bombing. The event shocked the world and would go on to change public security forever. After the bombing, investigators combed every inch of Centennial Park. What they found wasn't just the remains of a crude explosive device, but the remains of a security system that had failed to anticipate the worst. At the time, large-scale public events had surprisingly minimal protection. Bag checks were rare, metal detectors were almost non-existent, and the idea of installing surveillance cameras throughout public spaces was seen as paranoid.
We didn't know what it was. For us, we thought, hey, it's gotta be a bomb. There's no security in there anyways. It's heaven for anyone who wants to put a bomb.
But that all changed after July 27th, 1996. The Olympic bombing exposed just how vulnerable the United States really was, even during one of its most high-profile international events. One of the first long-term ripple effects came years later, with the creation of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Yes, that agency was born in the aftermath of 9/11. But the Atlanta bombing had already shaken the foundations of how the nation approached domestic security.
Yes, I think we have obviously since that event learned a number of lessons. A lot of investment has happened in not only the tube, but in those emergency services, new radio systems, new equipment. So we are going to see certainly all those new things tested today. This is though one of a many test exercises we've performed over a long period of time, and we continue to test and learn those lessons right up to the opening ceremony on the 27th of July.
In 1996, the average security presence at public events looked more like customer service than counterterrorism. Basic uniforms, no body armor, no real-time surveillance, and minimal communication between agencies. Today, the contrast is undeniable. Modern security officers are equipped with bullet-resistant vests, Glock 17s, encrypted radios, reinforced boots, and real-time access to surveillance feeds. Bag checks, which used to be random or symbolic, turned into thorough inspections with strict protocols. Undercover officers began moving silently through crowds, trained to identify suspicious behavior long before a threat could unfold. Surveillance systems were no longer limited to a few grainy cameras pointed at exits. Instead, entire parks, transit stations, and public plazas were covered with high-definition feeds monitored in real time. American security officers are far better prepared for situations like the Atlanta bombing. Let's hope nothing like it happens ever again. But if it does, they're ready.